Welcome, everyone, to the Trailblazing Leaders podcast. It is my goal to bring you the insights and wisdom from some of the most exceptional leaders in business today. Leaders who have a track record of driving outstanding business growth by attracting, developing, and retaining great talent. And during each episode, my guests will be sharing their expertise and stories and innovations that cover a wide range of trailblazing leadership topics, such as their philosophy of leadership, how they got to the role, the art and science of creating an organizational culture that attracts, retains, and develops great talent, plus what they recommend for up-and-coming trailblazing leaders. So please stay with us to the end of this episode, where I'll be sharing how you can get a special leadership gift. I'm excited to welcome Gillian Davis to this episode of Trailblazing Leaders podcast. Gillian has a philosophy to be a human resource leader with a heart and spine center approach. 15 years of experience in technology and digital advertising, from her senior positions with Razorfish, Havas Media, and Tesla to Mission North. Mission North is a communication agency that integrates PR, digital marketing, social marketing, and analytics to help companies turn their vision into impact. She now leads the people function, which means she's looking after employee engagement, recruitment, and all aspects of the HR strategy across the employee lifecycle. Gillian is an expert in building and nurturing and fostering a culture of innovation, which aligns directly with their agency's mission to use an audience-first approach to help guide B2B buyers through their pivotal moments across the buyer's journey. Gillian is an avid champagne and wine taster. How wonderful is that? And after living and working in France for 3 years, she now enjoys California's countryside for its incredible local olive oils, cheeses, and of course, its wonderful wines. She's a former ski instructor and a native of Seattle, and she now gets to enjoy the sunnier slopes of Tahoe and Mammoth with her family. It is my honor to get right into it with Gillian. I want to discuss this philosophy of what it means as an HR leader to be heart and spine centered.
Yeah.
Tell me about what is that? Tell me what that's about. How did you come to it, and what do you use it for?
Well, my philosophy for leadership and for, business in general is about outcomes, coupled with empathy. And so I think that there's a real possibility to be both and do both at the same time. In my own background, I didn't start out in HR. I started out in the business. I started out actually rather late in my career in HR. And so I know what it feels like to, have people tell you what to do and to be in a position of less authority. And I try to bring that empathy into the decisions that we make every day at our executive leadership level. And I want to foster an environment of collaboration. I want people to feel like learning and experimentation, which I find crucial to talent development and leadership as well, are part of our ethos. And so having that heart and having the guts, really the spine, to make the hard decisions or to suggest the audacious thing is much more interesting than just following the formula, don't you think?
Yes, I love the aspect of this, the fact that we can get outcomes and be empathetic at the same time. I refer to it, we're entering an era of human management. Not that you're a manager of action and all the rest of it, but that the need for the humanity of leading people is greater than it's ever been before, because the new workforces and workplaces and work methods are demanding new things.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And that means authentic connection, authentic meaning. Because you and I both come from the marketing space, I'd like to delve into it. One I noticed is that your philosophy aligns with your agency's philosophy. So your purpose as an HR leader and the agency's purpose is there. How do you find that actualizes in the workplace? Do people feel that alignment, and how does it work for you?
Well, I think the question is twofold. One, as a person is trying to find a place to work, I think it's very important to be connected to the mission, to the value set of the company that they're thinking about joining. I mean,
Yes.
there's certainly companies that I would be less enthusiastic about joining on the basis of what they say their values and their mission are. So we've developed our set of values based on input from an executive advisory group, which is a 6 to 9 month commitment from a group of folks who are hand raisers, would like to get involved in this kind of work in the business at all levels. And our co-CEOs are incredibly focused, and they lead the EAG, the Executive Advisory Group, to make sure that the values that we espouse are actually showing up in our day to day. So we're not just talking values in a vacuum. We're making sure that we see all of them, whether it is move with a purpose, great minds don't think alike, one team all in, test yourself, go beyond, stay curious. Those are all really, really important values to each and every one of us in the executive team. And it is too for every employee that works at Mission North.
I love those values. Let's get to the business side of it, meaning in the marketing business and services business, at times, there's always this challenge between profit and people. How, and we care about our people. We're a people first organization, but we got to make our number. How do you walk that talk?
Yeah.
How do you authentically deal with those challenges?
Well, we like to take a data-driven approach. I mean, when we're talking about programs that obviously cost money or require investment, we want to make sure that we're not just throwing, ideas into the ether, but that they actually resonate both for us and for our employees. And some of the most popular programs that we've developed in the last few years have been a mentorship matching program where we literally play matchmaker between those who would like to be mentored and those who would like to mentor. We also have developed a third year coming up this summer of a fellowship program aimed at bringing in BIPOC women into communications who wouldn't perhaps normally have chosen communications as a career path. And that comes with a summer on-the-job training opportunity, a stipend toward their continued studies, and we are really proud to say that our fellow from last summer is actually coming on board as an employee this year. So someone who wasn't maybe going to choose the world of professional communications has chosen to join us full time. So, that's that data speaks for itself, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like, though, you've been able to identify extremely effective and cost-effective talent development or talent growth or experiential growth programs that engage the right employee at the right place where they are.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have other what we call micro learning sessions that we have unveiled over the last 2 years because we found that in order to keep people engaged in learning, learning sessions need to be not hours long or traveling somewhere to attend, but actually from the comfort of their half Friday off towards learning. We actually block everyone's calendars for the last half of every Friday for individual learning.
Well, that's a philosophy of the business.
That's a philosophy of the business, yeah. And it's proved to be very restorative. It reminds people that we care about them as a person, not just what they're delivering to clients. I mean, these folks that work in this field are incredibly giving, and they give everything. Then they're scanning the news every day, and they're confronted with just a lot of data and information. And so by the time they get to Friday, they're ready to invest in self and, have that moment to refresh professionally.
Well, I commend your leaders for making that commitment of those hours on behalf of the people. And allowing to know that if we invest in our people, the client work will happen.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of the service profit chain model out of Harvard, where if we take care of our people, the clients get taken care of, the profits get taken care of. So clearly, here's a leadership team that is walking the talk in that regard.
I couldn't say it better.
So talk to me about team performance and the relationship between a manager and your teams. Where do you spend time, if at all, between developing what a great manager and helping that manager run a terrific team? What do
Yeah.
you do in that regard?
Well, that is, I would say, the trickiest level for any business
Yes.
to get right. Right. So, one of the opportunities that our soon to be managers have is to begin attending soon to be manager training so that when they're actually managers and they're actually assigned individuals to manage and have their project work in addition, as usual, that they can meet that challenge, that they have the skills, the toolbox is set, and that we are continually mentoring our new managers. So that is a main focus of the position of general manager is to make sure that in conjunction with HR and learning that we're keeping an eye out for folks who could use additional support and skills in that area. And I think that one of the things that keeps everything very fresh for our employees is the fact that we, as an organization, have adopted a quarterly goal setting and measurement outcomes. Every quarter we do it. It's based on a book called Traction,
Yep.
and it ladders up all the way up and down the organization, and everybody feels that sort of 12-week drumbeat and has similar goals in mind during that time. And I think one of the ways that we can get away from strong management is when we're not connecting every single person in the organization to our goals.
Well, if I had an award for an organization that really understands what it is to develop talent before they step into the role, you would get it. Because I think that statistics I read is somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of new to the role managers feel they were not prepared.
Right.
Their company didn't give them the tool. They got promoted because they did a really good job of what they were doing prior, but
Right.
that doesn't mean they were a people leader. And
Right.
all of a sudden they wonder why they're struggling or failing. So, congratulations and kudos to the wisdom that you bring to your leaders to prepare before they step up into that role. I've
Yeah.
seen it all too often, even in my own organization. We might have not succeeded as best by promoting and then wondering why their team is struggling or floundering or people are leaving because we didn't give that manager the right preparatory steps.
Yeah. Well, it's very frustrating if you feel like you suddenly have a second job, but you're not really sure how to accomplish it. So our competencies also help ensure that everyone's being treated the same way within the same level of the organization.
And this role of manager, I think, is one of the most difficult roles because I don't think there's a business where you're not a hands-on manager having to do, a doer manager,
Right.
and a leader manager trying to develop and grow others on that path, plus administrative tasks. So to be a manager, you have to be so agile and flexible. And how do you inspire or teach that?
Yeah. Well, we do give a lot of feedback. We are a feedback-driven organization. We try to instill that feedback is a gift, and that it is part of the conversation, and that it is less about a moment in time and judging, and more about mentoring and coaching. And when we have that sort of transparent dialogue happening back and forth between whether it's individual contributors or folks who manage teams and others in the organization that are doing that work, it takes the fear out of it. I think we don't have to be afraid of getting feedback. I think where feedback becomes a challenge is when we only get it occasionally.
Yes.
And then we have a lot to worry about.
Yes. I had an interview with a gentleman who was running an autonomous AI technology. And he said, when you run an autonomous vehicle of any sort, and this was from around the world, is the feedback comes in 100 milliseconds.
Yeah.
And so his aspect was, if we get the feedback frequently, we can understand what to do and how to adjust, whether we're on course or off course. But if companies don't allow rapid feedback mechanisms, whether it's weekly or quarterly or whatever the right frequency is, then there becomes this fear.
Yeah.
And also, on the other hand, the person giving the feedback needs to feel safe, psychologically safe, that they can share their feeling and there's no retribution to it. Right. How do you deal with anonymous feedback?
Yeah, we have a few forums for anonymous feedback. So before our monthly all hands, we have an anonymous ask me anything is what it is. And we address those questions in the all hands as we can, right? I mean, sometimes there are questions about the macroeconomic landscape that we just don't have answers to. But generally speaking, we're able to answer that anonymous forum. And then we also have several opportunities for feedback through engagement surveys. And our engagement surveys are anonymous. So we want people to feel that they really can say anything that's on their mind, what's been going on for them, what can we do better. Every question has an opportunity for free form text. So it's not just radio buttons and a number scale, but really help us understand why you picked the number that you did. And then the last thing is we look a lot at our employee recommendation number, our ENPS number. Would you recommend Mission North to a friend? And we take that number very seriously. And, we have been very lucky that people do want to recommend Mission North to a friend, and our ENPS number is, a sort of best in class level.
Yeah. So that's the magic. A great culture creates great talent, who then attracts more great talent, who continue to have a great culture. And so these steps end up being this wonderful virtuous cycle of growth, because nothing beats great talent.
Correct.
I was listening to Tim Cook. He said, what's his number one priority he thinks about every day? People. If I have brilliant people, and then his strategy and execution, but it's the brilliant people, and attracting them is not easy. The marketing industry, there's a lot of competition going on.
Right.
Well, on the agency side.
Well, we want to create a culture where we aren't the smartest people in the room. You all are the smartest people in the room. We want to learn from each other. We want to be challenged from each other. I think the fact that we have a fairly flat organization, there's not as much hierarchy as you might see elsewhere, contributes to that in a positive way. And so people feel like their voice is heard. I mean, our executive advisory group is made up of everybody from account coordinators all the way up to VP level, and they're advising the co-CEOs and HR and other leaders in the company on any number of very important topics that we're tackling.
What I love about that is the CEOs are listening to what I call the information from the four corners.
Yes.
It used to be we could walk around and all that sort of thing, but what you're really saying is, hey, I'm hearing it from the account coordinator down on this side, right, the VP on that side. I'm getting the information we need, which I think is absolutely fantastic. That's such kudos. I want to talk about the topic of trust.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create, or how have you create what I'll call vulnerability-based trust, the ability to share my feelings? We talked about anonymous feedback, but what about I just trust the organization, I trust my manager, I trust the culture? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, we have worked very hard over the last 5 years to improve and expand on a transparent communication style. And so that really is, if we're hearing anything that's the rumblings in the organization or things that need to be addressed, we call a special meeting and we sit down and we say, hey, we're hearing rumblings, and we want to make sure that we're answering these questions before, other versions of what might be happening get out and become the truth. I think we want to also balance our need for business outcomes with employee engagement. And I think when people feel that we're doing that balancing act, and they don't just have profitability and growth as the only words that are being used as relates to their career and their experience, they do trust the organization more. The fact that we have someone entirely dedicated on my team to employee experience means that we put our money where our mouth is. We're paying a salary to someone who, that is her job, is to make sure that we have a best-in-class employee experience. So I think all of those moments in time and, saying what we do and doing what we say and it all ringing true kind of comes together to foster that trust. And our co-CEOs are just incredibly great communicators. So they are very approachable. People can put time on their calendars at any time, stop by, have a chat, give them a phone call. And it happens on the regular. I mean, it's very common that they get random phone calls and questions from people rather than waiting and stewing and wondering.
So tell me a little bit about your organization as the HR organization, and then how large is Mission North? Let's just put some context to our listeners about how many people you're dealing with, multiple locations,
Yeah.
and then I'll delve into a few other
So
questions.
we are a San Francisco-based company originally, from venture capital recommendations here in Silicon Valley, expanded out to New York, where we also have a very nice office now in Manhattan. And then we have a lot of remote employees in what we call hubs. So we have Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Boston, and really smart people working in all of those locations. And, I think that we value in-person time quite a bit. So we do try to bring people here and there so we can see each other, not just over computer screens. Of course, there were a few years there, but that was a bit of a challenge. But we are an 85-person company, and we service clients that are pre-IPO all the way up to, Fortune 500 level clients. So the type of work that we're doing and the challenges that our people are solving for those clients can be incredibly varied.
Yeah, very complex. So you have a hybrid workplace. You are spread across the nation. That's the beauty of hybrid, is we're no longer restricted to the geo of our recruitment.
Right.
How do you guide your managers or leaders to connect with the remote who you don't get to see enough? We
Yeah.
as humans, we're meant to be face to face, 6 feet. We can tell everything you're feeling just by you never saying a word, body posture. But screen to screen is a little more difficult. Do you train on that little aspect, which is so crucial?
Yeah, we do. We actually train on remote working. We have a best practices document that we ask everybody to sign off on and review. And we really try not to keep people remote. We want to bring them out and have them join events, or, if we are having a media event or a dinner or something like that. They can move around and come see those of us who are sitting in hubs. So the training is very important. I think that what we encourage people to do a lot is use Slack as a huddle. So instead of waiting to have a formal meeting on Zoom, we use the Slack huddle as the water cooler. So if you have a quick question and you were thinking about someone, you just hit that button and you're giving them a little quick call, and it's like you're dropping by their desk, but virtually, and having a more informal chat. So with the adoption of people using Slack in that way, there also has been more connection.
Yeah.
Lastly, I'll say that each of our hubs, whether office-based or remote, does have a culture club budget that they get to use on a quarterly basis.
I
So
love that.
I'll tell you that our Boston team is at a Red Sox game this week, and the San Francisco team has gone wine tasting, and the Washington D.C. team has met for museum visits, and everything in between. Los Angeles has gotten together at Disneyland and done
Wonderful.
like swan boats and all kinds of exciting activities together over the years. So we just make sure that we also have those moments carved out. They're on the calendar. They're happening every quarter. And even if they can't come to sort of the larger offices, they can at least be with the folks who are in their general locations.
So what I give highest respect to you and your leaders is the fact that the money for these what might get considered extracurricular activity are not extracurricular.
Yeah.
They're core to your cultural success, and therefore they stay in the budget. They don't get cut out when you're trying to make a number. They are there because it's a key piece of your philosophy of what makes your business successful.
Well, and it makes a lot of business sense. If you know the people that you're working with on a deeper level, when you have a new client problem or a new question or something like that, you feel much more comfortable approaching people that you've spent some time with, and not just in group meetings or, with a client. I think there's a lot of social connection that comes from those moments.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I want to give you a moment to talk about what you feel is one of your best successes, whether it be a case study, a new initiative, whatever you're most proud of, because clearly you have so many things. But tell me about an initiative, a moment, a program that you just feel so proud of given who you are and your responsibility to the growth of your organization?
Well, I came up in a lot more tech startup engineering group, to be honest, male focused companies before I landed in sort of digital advertising and PR communications. So one of the areas that was really important to me, and using data to understand, what the disconnect was connecting women in an environment where it was primarily male driven to opportunities at the VP plus level. So developing a high potential women's program in a technology company that did not exist before. And we wanted to, understand was there something that the organization was doing to hold people back? Was there something else that we didn't understand? And it turned out to be that point of connection. So we actually had some budget to bring folks who we considered high potential female options together in Chicago and understand and listen what's going on for you. What can we do to service your career trajectory better? And we found out that as a business, we had not done a very good job of socializing that these were opportunities. We had the way that we recruited looked like those opportunities were externally facing, and that we had not provided sort of an internal platform for folks to be able to apply directly for positions that they should be very well qualified for. And this, is a company coast to coast, so should have been lots of opportunities for mobility and all of that sort of thing. And once we sort of cracked that quandary, it was like the floodgates opened and people were excited and clamoring, and they felt very supported and very seen. And I think it made everybody in the organization feel good because we had really solved a challenge, which is, why aren't you applying for that promotion? Oh, I didn't know about it. Why aren't you applying for that position? Oh, what are you talking about? I didn't know about it. So something that seems so simple, but it just took some teamwork and dedication from our CEO to crack that, and it was very, very satisfying.
Congratulations on that, and
Okay.
I think you really hit the nerve of people want career growth. They need clarity of where that career growth is and the opportunity, and all too often we assume that people understand, and you didn't assume. You were able to discover and uncover and make that come alive.
Absolutely.
You talk about two things I want to unpack a little further. One is you talk a lot about data. Maybe you could share some of the key metrics or KPIs that, hey, if there were 5 or 7 that I could only measure, these are the 5 or 7 that every talent leader, chief people officer has to put their pulse on. So I want to talk about that piece. And then the second follow-up I'm going to ask you is advice to men. So we'll start.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, that will go up. But let's start with the question of, hey, we're data-driven. I've been a data-centric leader. If there's data, these are what I recommend you all look for.
Well, and it really depends on what challenge you're trying to solve regarding what KPIs you want to implement. But what I would say is, by and large, if you are measuring programs, for example, that you're putting in place, if you are looking to engage and increase effectiveness from employees, start with a question: what's important to you? I think all too often the business comes in from a very top-down perspective and says, I think I know what you need. And so let me create like this whole whatever learning channel or whatever. And they're not really listening to what people are asking for, what they need. And so it doesn't do any good to then measure something that people really didn't want to engage with anyway. So I think that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is to know that no matter what programs you're developing, it can take several years for outcomes to really be seen. And I think that's the other challenge that companies have, is trying to measure and then decide to step away from something too soon. We don't create culture overnight. We create culture by continually having those touchstones that we're bringing up that we're showing that we're doing, that we're, do you see, where I'm going with this?
Yes, of course. It takes time for people to actually believe you're walking the talk. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen in a snap beat. Creating DNA is a multi-year process, and sometimes we're too short looking for immediate result of human behavior change, which doesn't happen.
Which is tough with sort of things that fall under the umbrella of human resources, right? It is an art and a science. So the data helps inform how you walk through the organization and the things that you're able to bring to the table, the things that you're able to effectively influence, especially behind the scenes. But without the data, you wouldn't know what you're doing. Without people's input, you wouldn't know what you're doing very well. And so it's really the mix of those two pieces that make for, the magic, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to talk about advice to senior men on how to create doors, pathways, safety, so we can continue to break down the barriers for women at the highest levels of senior leadership. Because you talked about here, I was in a technology business, mostly of men. It had all sorts, and the women weren't there.
Right.
We're kind of at this. We know this is a problem. It has to happen, but I think sometimes men are not self-aware, and so I want to take the risk of asking the question, "Hey guys, let me tell you what it is to be a woman on our side. And when you do something like this, or you're not aware of that, you really cause a challenge. So I'm going to give you a little bit of advice for you to kind of have a little more self-awareness."
Well, I'm going to bring this question out a little bit and bring it to more than just men.
Fine.
I think if you're looking around the table and you see everybody that thinks like you, acts like you probably have a very homogeneous culture. And this is not just about outward appearing diversity, right? I believe very much that we need as much diversity as we can get our hands on, and multiple studies, whether we're talking about McKinsey or Columbia or PricewaterhouseCoopers, have put in place many methodologies that prove that a more diverse culture equals more profitability and, quite frankly, a smarter organization.
Yes.
So men, if you want to have a smarter, more profitable organization, you're going to look around the table and say, who's in the room right now? Are women here? If women are here, is there space for them to be heard? I think one of the other areas that we as senior leaders tend to do, both with more junior employees and with perhaps people of opposite gender, is we over-explain things. It's like, we need to ask, is there anything else I can explain for you? And wait for that answer rather than jumping in with 2 feet and assuming that somebody has no knowledge. I had a funny experience with someone at a senior leadership level who actually has a background in like financial analysis, kind of came up in, very much sort of the boys' network of investment banking, Wall Street, and the like. And was talking to someone who had no idea that that was her previous background, and started, really mansplaining, how the markets work and, and this sort of stuff. And I mean, we were just all chuckling because she could have taught a course on exactly what he was going on about. But that was a great example of something where, did you show curiosity about previous experience? If someone comes to you and says, I've worked in a global environment and I speak 3 languages, are you gonna start telling them things when you've only been in one city your whole life?
Yes, correct. And so what I take from that is the adage, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Right. To listen more than you talk. I think the second aspect is for everyone to know themselves and their own anxieties of the quiet, which is, as you say, a curious mind. And sometimes when you ask the question, you have to just sit in the quiet and the discomfort until somebody speaks. Versus, if, like for me, I'm a heavy D person, I'm a driver. I have a hard time biting my tongue, just counting it out. So
right.
I think the self-awareness of who you are and your style at whatever level you are is going to allow for the diversity of brilliance within an organization. So I appreciate that wisdom to me and all of our other colleagues, and the fact that it's a broader aspect of look around the table. If you're looking the same, you're already in trouble.
I did want to say one more thing about being a D and waiting. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that all organizations face, which is, do we have to come to a decision today? Or is this something that we as a leadership team could do better by sitting with collectively, coming back together after some more thought, because our lives are very busy. We're all trying to do a lot with the limited hours that we have each week. And when we can do that, I think it shows, a real marked increase in sort of the maturation of the team. And that trickles down through the organization in a very positive way, because it sort of reduces anxiety of needing to make decisions right now.
And I love that aspect, because in any business, you're going to have a lot of different communication styles and comforts.
Yes.
The D's, the me's are always trying to say, well, right now I made the decision, here I am, especially as the CEO when I was at the head. And I look back, I go, wait a minute. But as your point is, if you can take that breath for a few days, the creative process works. No creative process happens instantaneously. They know they want to develop and think. But if your business philosophy is, we're going to discuss it, and then we'll come back because the world will not fall apart unless it's an emergency, everybody wins in that deal.
Yeah, I agree.
I love that philosophy. I think I want to come right up in here in terms of, how do you see the future? What is the trend of talent development in our AI-enabled world?
Yeah.
And the continuation of hybrid work?
Okay.
What do you see yourself? What do you see for the industry? What do you see for your peers?
Well, obviously, we can't have this conversation without talking about AI. I mean, it's not just because it's a buzzword, but it's because it is showing up in every aspect of our lives. Yes. Right now. If you are in the HR world, you're looking at whether chatbots can replace benefits questions. Can we produce learning segments for folks using augmented reality and VR headsets? We're looking at tools that may or may not be able to better parse resumes than we do in recruiting by ourselves, and sourcing and outreach and letter writing and all these tasks that are part of just the HR organization, let alone the PR communications field. So one of the things that we've done at Mission North is we actually created a task force to look at the ways that we do and do not want AI to be in our professional space. And they did a remarkable job together producing a required training module for everybody to take, which includes some agreements about what we do and don't use AI for with our clients internally, et cetera. So, we are really focused on these kinds of technologies, in part because these technology companies are the kinds of clients that we have, but also because we're really interested in it.
Yes. Yeah. So what you're saying is our future is going to be AI enabled. Mm-hmm. And now's a great time to identify where the opportunities are.
Right.
It's not about getting loss of job. It's about being a more productive individual, because these low-level tasks don't allow us to be at our full human potential.
Absolutely.
I think the opportunity to have a new level of human potential and unleashing and flourishing really sits with this supportive technology versus, you're losing your job tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, kind of a clickbait headline.
Yes.
I'm sure there will be places in organizations where AI can do a more reliable job, for example, in the future. I don't think that's here now. I think the biggest challenge with AI-assisted technology is accuracy. I would be mortified if we invested in, for example, a benefits platform that supposedly helps people through the questions that they might have around their benefits, whether it's pre-qualifying for a surgery or a pre-existing condition, and then to find out that bot was giving people incorrect information. There are moments in time where we also have to be very careful about the trust and safety we put in AI assisted technology. So, but I think from a training perspective, it could be very exciting. You could have group trainings on with an AR, VR headset together in the same room, but be in different locations. I think for different industries, whether you're talking about aeronautics or what have you, you could do a lot that is safer for people rather than putting them in environments where injuries can take place. So I'm excited to see where we're going with these technologies. It's definitely going to be part of the future. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to support digital upskilling for every employee, because they're going to need it to be more adaptable and to be able to contend with the many, many, many vendors that are coming up with some pretty incredible things. Some of them really good and some of them less good. So we need to be able to tell the difference.
I'll have two more questions. One is, you described this thing called digital upskilling.
Yeah.
What is that from your perspective?
Well, if you think about, the business that we're in, right? We are storytellers. The kinds of education that people have likely come into on their path to coming into PR communications maybe didn't include a lot of sort of technical skills. And so as we, for example, with AI, are finding that we can use these technologies in various ways, we want to make sure we're the trainer. We don't want to just take something off the shelf and give it to people. We want to make sure that it's really bespoke and speaks to our industry and what we need it for. And so that's what I'm referring to in terms of digital upskilling, is we're giving the investment to folks to be able to use it in our industry.
Got it. So you're controlling, organizing, collecting,
and supporting,
and bringing it forward with direct, specific application to your industry and to your business.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. So here's my last question for you. What advice do you have to the up-and-comer trailblazing leaders, whether they're looking for your role as a senior HR talent individual, or whether they're just a up-and-coming leader looking to drive a business where, people is everything?
Yeah.
How about 3 pieces of wisdom?
Well, I think, really being honest with yourself about what lights you up. Because no one wants, if you're an up and coming leader, nobody wants to have someone in role who's kind of down at the mouth, right? Like, we really want to make sure that we're finding opportunities for people in leadership that align very much with their passions, and like I said, helps light them up. I think the other thing is making sure that they focus on team. Many, many leaders coming up and believe that they have to do this themselves and that this is an individual pursuit. But you really benefit by finding mentors and others to connect with that you admire, that you would like to pattern yourself after. So don't be afraid to ask for some time from somebody like that in your network, because people love to give back and would be usually are more than happy to lend their expertise. And then lastly, I think that balancing question. So a lot of times with trailblazing leaders, they're hard driving and they're outcomes focused. But what about developing other people along the way with you? What about bringing everybody along on the journey? I think that that's incredibly important. And people don't forget when you do that. It engenders a tremendous amount of loyalty and support that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I think that it is more satisfying for the individual as well.
Yes. So I think our job of a trailblazing leader is to try to look for the magnificence within each individual so that they can unleash their full human potential.
Correct.
And that's kind of my philosophy about what it is our job, wherever I am, whether I'm a new to the role manager, a senior manager, the CEO. If I can find the magnificence within each person, because everybody is magnificent, and I can facilitate an organization and culture that allows them to flourish and be their best and bring their joy and be able to speak their mind and bring themselves, the whole human incredible experience with others,
Right.
then we have done a great job to build an organization and a culture that helps them, helps their families, helps their communities, helps their clients, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Gillian, it has been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Me too.
Longer. There's so many more questions. I hope we'll get a chance to speak again. And I appreciate your brilliance and how you are helping people flourish to the highest level and what your leaders and your company are doing within the industry of communication. So thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was an incredible conversation with Gillian Davis of Mission North. The recap here could be extensive, but let me just share what I feel are the really high points that she shared with us today. Importantly, she talked about the aspect of authenticity and transparency about living your values, that her organization and her leaders really believe in a people-first culture, that they walk that talk all the way down to leaving Friday afternoons open for personal development and charge, and trying to, instead of squeeze out the last bit of work on a Friday afternoon, they allow that time for people to recharge. And with that, because they have a lot of remote offices and remote workers, they have what they call culture budget for all the offices, and those stay in the budget because they know when people are connected with each other and had a chance to get to know each other through fun or experience or whatever it is, they can work better together on client solutions. The other thing that she had was advice for every senior leader, which was to look around at the table, and if everybody at the table looks like you, you've got a challenge because you're missing the opportunity of diversity, of thought, of mind, and that diverse organizations are smarter organizations and are more profitable organizations. And so you need to find and be passionate about seeking out that diversity at every level. I love the fact that they had created an executive advisory group that was of volunteers from across the agency, from the lowest level account coordinator to the highest level VP, that the CEOs would listen and collect the information from what I call the four corners so that they could really hear the heartbeats that is happening in their organization. She also talked about the fact that the decisions that they make are data-driven. Whether it's a team problem, whether it's a program, that monitoring the data, letting the data drive what the implementation is and the need is important. I think Gillian spoke about the importance of asking the question of the people and having them then give you the answer. Now, she also talked about that same aspect when it relates in the room, instead of trying to over-explain to people in the room, that especially for the drivers, the trailblazing leaders, to ask a question and sit quiet with your own anxiety, your own aspect, so that people have a chance to voice. And they might come from a different perspective and you can hear. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Our job is to listen twice as much as we talk. Also, we talked about the importance of knowing your own styles and how to communicate with different styles that are there in the organization. Overall, Mission North with Gillian, they are an authentic people-first organization. They have incredible high belonging skills, belonging scores. They have incredibly high refer an employee or friend to the organization. So great organizations that are great talent-centric create and attract great talent. And lastly, she talked about embracing AI as a tool that is relevant to help us do the tasks that we're spending time on that don't allow us to be our full potential. And being cautious but open-minded to give important digital upskilling to everyone to understand, is this a good solution? Is that a bad solution? What is the authenticity of that solution? And more important, to recognize that the world is going to get better as we now have technology as our support. So I think there's so much that Gillian shared. I hope you have a chance to listen to the podcast again. And I thank you for being with us. Once again, because you stayed to the very end, if you would go to the Kern and Partners website, I have a special leadership gift for you there. It's at kernandpartners.com. It's our Magnificent Manager Talent Advantage e-guide. It has the 12 behaviors to allow managers to create terrific teams that drive innovation, sales, and profit. It's full of great information. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Trailblazing Leaders Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes, you're going to find them on all major streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube. The podcast is also available at our website at kernandpartners.com. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you on our next episode.